Good morning. I hope you're all doing really well. Today, I'm going to talk about the trauma bond. If you're interested in this content, feel free to like and subscribe. And if you're interested in private coaching, there's a link to my website below. So the trauma bond, what is it? Well, a trauma bond is when you have had an unhealthy attachment to someone who is emotionally abusive, emotionally or psychologically abusive. So it's an unhealthy attachment to an emotionally or psychologically, physically or verbally abusive relationship. And this typically occurs if it's strictly an emotionally and psychologically abusive relationship, say with a narcissist. It typically occur through this process of intermittent reinforcement. And intermittent reinforcement is where there is an inconsistency, where there's love bombing, where they do things with you, they spend time with you, they tell you you're the most amazing, they love you, blah 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 blah, and then it is the juxtaposition is with abuse. So love bombing, abuse. Love bombing, abuse, and it's inconsistent. You never know when it's going to come or when it's going to hit. It may be, it doesn't follow like a regular pattern, right? So sometimes the abuse, if it's with, say, a covert narcissist, the abuse can be very hidden. It can be very subtle in the form of silent treatment, withholding of sex, communication, compliments. It can be withholding of any sort of information. They can be stonewalling you. There can be passive aggressive behaviors. They can agree to something to your face to sort of placate you, and then later on not keep their word. Their actions don't match their words. You got to start really watching people's actions and to see if they actually match their words. So what happens when there's this intermittent reinforcement, you get addicted to the chemicals and the hormones that are happening within your body, the cortisol and the oxytocin, and other various neurochemicals. So when this is happening, it is normal. And when I say it's normal, I mean the process that's happening in your brain, in your body, and your emotional system. This process of getting sort of addicted to this sort of trauma or this, abusive relationship, it's actually normal, because that's actually what happens when you are subjected to that kind of abuse, that intermittent reinforcement. It's your body's sort of natural response to intermittent reinforcement. Read on, a little bit on Pavlov's dog, or there's other studies out there that talks about it. And it's really this thing that's happening. So if this happened to you, it's not your fault that you're having this unhealthy attachment to this toxic relationship, because your body is going through its natural process of sort of reacting in that way. Now I'm not saying that it's healthy for you to stay in this relationship, or that you can't in the future see the red flags and avoid this relationship, and that you shouldn't do some work on your own codependence and sort of not seeing things for what they really are, being in the fantasy mode rather than looking at the reality, ignoring people's red flags, ignoring where their actions are not matching their words, etc. Right? But bottom line is, you start to associate abuse with love. And it's your brain's natural response to this sort of treatment. But it makes it, when you're in this place of being in a trauma bond, it makes it very difficult for your logical brain to make good choices and for you to see the reality. And this is one of the reasons why it's very hard to leave. In fact, they say it can take up to 7 attempts to leave these relationships, because you're so trauma bonded, and your body and your brain and your nervous system have become attached to this sort of toxic person or toxic interaction. And so it can be very hard to get out. So if you're having a difficult time leaving one of these relationships, it's very understandable, because you have been sort of neurologically or neurochemically addicted to this abuse. So here are some of the signs that you still may be actually still stuck in the trauma bond, even if you have sort of removed yourself from the relationship. So one is you are still falling for their love bombing. You could have moved out, you could have even divorced them, you could have left the relationship, but you're still allowing them in and listening to their, I will change, I'll stop drinking, I'll go to Sex Addicts Anonymous, I'll do, whatever it is that they promise that they'll do. I promise I'll change. Or they're love bombing. You're the love of my life. I miss you. I promise I'll do it better this time. If you're falling for the love bombing, that's one sign that you're still stuck in the trauma bond. Another sign is that you might be out of the relationship. You may have even gone no contact, but you're waiting and you're wishing for the narcissist to come back to you, even though objectively you've been able to get out of the relationship and look at it and be like, oh wow, that was actually pretty toxic. You may even be able to see that these behaviors are abuse, but you're still sort of waiting and wishing like for the narcissist to come back. Or they're taking up a lot of rent space in your head. You may be, if you're making choices based on what you think the narcissist would want, or making choices based on like staying in closer proximity to them or something like that. Like if you're stopping yourself from taking a new job, or from moving to a new city, or doing something that you think the narcissist might disapprove of, or doing something that may like take you further away from the narcissist. This is where they're all maybe sort of taking up an unhealthy amount of rent space in your head. Another sign that you might still be in the trauma bond is you might be making excuses for the narcissist and their behaviors. And you might make up all these different excuses like, oh, well, they have autism, or that was a personal example, or, somehow you're taking responsibility for their bad behaviors. I'm not suggesting that you shouldn't take responsibility for your bad behaviors. Like if you were bad with money management in the relationship, or if you were like shopping too much, which was definitely one of my bad behaviors in the relationship, then you should be taking personal responsibility for what you have done. Also, like in my case, I had some very codependent behaviors. I didn't have good boundaries. I allowed myself to stay in a position to be hurt for the possibility of love, security, and approval, and even financial security, right? So I allowed myself to be abused for the possibility of those things. It wasn't even the reality of those things. It was the possibility, right? So you are responsible for your stuff, no doubt, right? And for me, again, it was the codependence, it was the poor money management. Those are the things that I was responsible for in the relationship that I was with a narcissist. But that's different than taking responsibility for their part, right? That's different than here they are cheating, lying, gaslighting, manipulating. They're flagrantly cheating on you, or they're doing whatever they're doing, and you blame yourself for their bad behaviors. You're taking over responsibility for the problems in the relationship. In 12-step recovery, we talk about, each one of us is responsible for our own side of the street. Like I'm responsible for my side of the street, and that person is responsible for their side of the street. I'm not responsible for their stuff. And if you tend to be a bit codependent, you probably take over responsibility for things that are not your responsibility, right? And if you were in a relationship with a narcissist, it's likely that you could have some tendencies of codependence, and you probably took on more than your share of the responsibility for fixing the relationship. And you probably went to therapy. You probably read the books. You probably go on these, websites and watch these videos, right? That's a sign that you're the one that's like, you're taking all the responsibility. Now, of course, you are responsible for your own healing, even though if you were in a relationship with an abuser, you are not responsible for the abuse that happened to you. But in order for you to be happy and joyful and free, again, it is your job to heal the parts of you that allowed yourself to be in an unhealthy relationship, right? So again, let's get back to, if you're still making excuses for the narcissist, if you're taking responsibility for their bad behaviors, it's not your fault they cheated. If they cheated on you, that was a personal choice. When people cheat, it's a personal choice. it's not another person's fault. The reason I don't cheat is because of my own personal integrity. It has nothing to do with who I'm in relationship with. It has to do with who I am, right? And I'm sure a lot of you guys can say that. And when I was in my alcohol addiction, I did cheat, and something happened to me in my life where I hit a rock bottom and I got some help for my addiction. And now, as a person in recovery, that is no longer an option or a choice for me, because I've had a spiritual shift. I've had a moral shift. I have a moral code that I live by now. And so I don't cheat because of my own integrity. So again, you see how, it's not your responsibility to, it's not your job to take responsibility for somebody else's cheating, lying, gaslighting, verbal, emotional, psychological, or physical abuse. You didn't make them do it. They made choices. You make your choices, they make theirs, right? So that's another sign that you're still in the trauma bond, if you're making all sorts of excuses for them. And then another sign is if you feel tied to them. If you feel almost like, I think of it as a spiritual bond. It's like a spiritual, where you're still spiritually bonded to them. Other people can look at it like a psychic bond. And you'll see this sometimes. It's really weird, but sometimes you'll see this when, you're thinking about the narcissist and you haven't heard from them in a long time. And then you get a text out of the blue that's some weird text like, hey, what's up? Or just thinking about you, right? I don't get any of those, because once I went no contact, I completely went no contact. I was able to do that from watching these videos, from getting a narcissistic abuse recovery coach. I followed the instructions as best I could, which was I went no contact completely. So I have that person blocked in every regard. So but if you get, if you're thinking about them and you get a text or a phone call or something, that it's almost like a psychic connection. I don't really believe in that. Well, whatever. I'm not going to get off on my own personal beliefs, but you could think of it like a spiritual bond, a soul tie, however you want to look at it. But if that still exists there, and like, really, if they're still kind of pulling your strings, even if you've gone no contact, right? But this is why no contact is absolutely vital. Like, in order for you to start healing, it's really, really important that you go no contact, and you don't try to keep them on a string, because really what you're doing is keeping yourself on a string. And I found for myself, I did not really start healing until I went no contact. It was vital for my recovery. And even during that time, I was going through a really drawn out narcissistic divorce. So I still got triggered when I was no contact with the actual narcissists themselves. But since the divorce is finalized, I really have started to get some like incredible healing, because I have like absolutely no contact. And that is so awesome. It's just, I cannot stress the importance of that enough. And that's also no contact with the flying monkeys, that either they know this person is an abuser, or they're unaware, but whatever reason, they are supporting an abuser. They are supporting somebody who's abusing others, and they're okay with it. And that is not somebody that you want in your life anyway. You don't want somebody like that, because they're not ethical people, right? They're just not. Sometimes they're totally duped by the narcissist like you were. And I do understand that could be true. So I do give a little bit of leeway on the flying monkeys, but bottom line is, it's your job to keep them out, because you will get triggered. And this isn't a case where you still feel like that psychic bond, that soul tie, you still feel like tethered to the narcissist. And you really, if you're in this space, I really recommend that you set a really strong intention in your prayer and meditation practice to detach from this person and to break the soul tie. And whatever spiritual belief that you believe in, there's a way that you can frame that for yourself to kind of break that soul connection. Because otherwise you are probably still going to be triggered. And, this triggering, obviously, if do not stalk them on social media. I know that this is super hard not to do, especially if they're really out there with their news sources supply. Your morbid curiosity might bring you to go check them out on Facebook or Instagram or whatever these social media outlets are. But I really suggest you don't do that, because if you do that, you will get triggered. So it's all about, a lot of this is about, minimizing or eradicating the triggers so that you do not get into that state of emotional flashback and, those symptoms of complex post-traumatic stress injury. Also, another sign that you're still in the trauma bond is if you are spending a lot of time obsessing, thinking, ruminating, perseverating about this person. And I understand, you are going to be in this trauma bond regardless of your intention for a period of time. You will, because it takes time for your nervous system and your body and your brain to heal, and it takes deliberate effort of no contact and really doing a very it just takes getting away from them, no contact, no triggers, for you to start healing, for your body and your brain and your nervous system to heal. And everyone's healing trajectory is going to be different. The time frame for how long this takes is going to be different for each person. Some people might take a year, some people might take 3 years. It also depends upon how long you were in the relationship with the narcissist, how enmeshed you were with them. Were you married? Did you have children together? All of these things are factors. Do you still have children? Do you have to see them occasionally? Are you trying to employ gray rock, but you still get triggered when you drop the kids off? These are all factors that are going to play into how long it will take for you to get out of and break the trauma bond. But if there's a sign, if you're still thinking about them a lot, if you're making your decisions based on them, if your brain is still perseverating, if you're ruminating about the hurts and harms they caused you, these are all signs. And this is a really important one. Another sign that you're still in the trauma bond is if you are buying into the narcissist's reality, if you are buying into their storyline that everything's your fault, that you're to blame, that you were the failing of the relationship. And you can see that objectively when you look at them, you're like, oh, they're cheating. They're actually with the new source of supply. They actually broke up a marriage. They're actually, whatever. It could be, it doesn't, that's just an example. It could be that, they're obviously cheating. They're obviously lying. They're obviously, abusing you. They're calling you names. They're, sometimes physically abusing. That's not always the case with narcissists. A lot of them are very nonviolent, right? They don't actually, some of them don't ever get physically abusive. Some do, some don't. So you may not have had any physical abuse, but if you're still buying into their narrative, their storyline that is based on distortions and a distorted perception that isn't actually accurate. And even though you have a whole list of reality, this is what they actually did. My sister actually really helped me, because really early on, she helped me make a list of every single thing this person had actually done to me, made the list, right? And she was like, it doesn't matter what label that you subscribe to this person, this is what they did. They cheated, they lied, they gaslighted, they financially abused, they withheld sex, communication, intimacy, information, all sorts of things, right? So this was the thing that this person did. And she was like, that's the reality of what this person did. That's good enough reason for you to get yourself out of this really sick relationship. And I was very thankful for that, because I had that list and I could look at that and be like, oh, wait a minute, that is reality. Not this fantasy that I had in my head of who this person was, but that's the reality of their behaviors, right? So, but somehow, if you're still buying into the narcissist narrative, you're somehow still blaming yourself or accepting responsibility for their bad behaviors. That's another sign that you're still stuck in the trauma bond. And that's okay. It's okay if you're still stuck in the trauma bond, because quite frankly, it is going to take time for you to heal. And it's on some level, it's normal. You might even still be stuck in the relationship with the narcissist. And again, that is because your body and your brain have become addicted to this trauma. And it's part of what's happening neurologically in your system. And it's your body's natural response to intermittent reinforcement. So just know that if you are there, if you're stuck in the relationship, or if you're having a hard time getting out of it, or if you've gone no contact but you have a relapse once in a while and you go look on their Facebook, and or you accept a call from them, or you let them come over and have sex with you and do love bombing. I mean, this is just all tactics that some narcissists will employ. If you're still doing that, it's okay. Do not shame yourself. Do not shame yourself. You are on the journey. You're watching these videos, you're reading the books. Hopefully you're going to see a trauma therapist, or you're getting a narcissistic abuse recovery coach. You are, trying to do your healing work. So you're on the path. It's going to take what it takes. And for everyone, it's different. And again, it depends upon how long you were in the relationship, how enmeshed it was, if you have children or not, like all these factors, many variables. And so I understand, like I really, 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 really get it if you're still stuck on some level in the trauma bond. But just know this, you will heal. You will get over on the other side of it, and you will get into a space where you don't think about them as much as you used to. You just won't. And even when you think about them, you might not have that emotional charge. I mean, I can say that for the most part, with where I'm at right now, when I think about the qualifier, I have compassion for the most part. It's not pure compassion, but there's a lot of pity in there, and maybe even a little bit of condescending pity, but mostly it's compassion. I don't have that rage or that emotional flashback that I used to have when I was in the middle of the trauma bond. I just don't have it anymore. And even when I think about the person, it's pretty distant. It's not like I just don't get it. I don't get the same kind of emotional charge that I used to get. It's really dissipated. Now, where the compassion comes from a lot, I think for me, is I occasionally will imagine what it's like to be in that person's head, and it's such a tortured place. It's such a sad place to be, really. It's because I also understand that I think a lot of narcissism comes from trauma, and even if the trauma was spoiling by the parents, so that they objectified the child and made this child into a thing instead of a person, and put this child on a pedestal and made this child think they had to be perfect in order to be loved. That's a really difficult thing for a child to have to experience, right? So so for me, like there is, that compassion, and then imagining like, my gosh, what a dark headspace to be in. And I wouldn't wish that on my worst enemy, really. Like I wouldn't wish that, that awful headspace of what it must be like to be a narcissist. I wouldn't wish that on anyone. Seems like a terrible place to live in that kind of head, right? So that's where some of my compassion it comes from. But the reason why I'm able to I think be there is because I have broken the trauma bond to that toxic relationship. And so, it's just some things you can do to help you break the trauma bond. Obviously, watching these videos is a good, not just mine, but everyone's videos in this community. The ones that appeal to you and help you, that speak to your spirit and your soul. I recommend seeing a trauma therapist, and also, if you can, get a narcissistic abuse recovery coach. And I'm not saying that just to plug my own business. I'm saying it because for me, it was a huge integral part of my healing personally. Also, meditation has been very helpful. Prayer. I believe in a higher power, so that's been so helpful for me to engage actively in prayer and meditation. Yoga has been really helpful for me. I've done a lot of different sort of trauma therapies, including EMDR, somatic bodywork, somatic experiencing, transcranial magnetic stimulation, like a lot of different ways to heal the complex post-traumatic injury. I also have a very strong spiritual group. I have a community. For me, it's a 12-step recovery community. I go to Codependence Anonymous. That's been very helpful for me to start addressing my codependence. I've been working the codependent 12 steps so I can learn healthy boundaries and where I end and another person begins, and how to avoid people that are manipulative or abusive. And then also just time. The passage of time helps, as well as lots of exercise. For me, running, climbing, yoga, swimming, surfing, hiking, whatever it is that feeds your soul and nourishes you. And then very important to surround yourself with safe people, safe, loving friends that have your back, that do not trigger you. And if they talk about the narcissist and it's triggering to you, you can set a boundary around that. Hey, I can't talk about that person. I know you love me and I know you want to be here for me, but it's better for me if we just don't talk about that, because I'm doing my own therapeutic work around that. And I just don't want to hear anything that's going on in their life. I don't want to be re-injured. I don't want to be triggered. So I don't know if this is helpful for you, but from my heart to you, I really hope it is. I really hope that these videos you're finding some peace and solace, and know that wherever you're at, you are going to heal if you just keep on this path and eventually do go no contact as best you can, or extreme gray rock if you have to co-parent with these people. But short of co-parenting or having a narcissist like in your family, I don't really see any point of not of even having them in your life. No contact is really, really, really vital. So I hope you guys have a wonderful day. I hope you're thriving. I hope you're healing. I hope you're doing radical self-care. Have a great day. Bye-bye.